Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another Sunday Ski Cast. It's Andy Rose here in Kaprun, Austria with Snow Camps Europe. Welcome indeed. So tonight we are talking to Christoph Lentz from Fischer Sports. He is the Alpine Ski Boot Product Manager. We're very lucky to have Christoph. He would normally be trade facing. Members of the public wouldn't normally get to ask him questions in this kind of manner. So please do ask your questions. We have had a fair few sent in already, but we will try and get through all of the questions as we always do. You can place your questions in the comments below if you're watching on Facebook, also on YouTube, and then we will see them here in the studio. If you are watching on Facebook, do remember you can host a watch party. Also, please like and share, and as I said, comment. If you're over on YouTube, then don't forget to hit the subscribe button. And also, if you want to ask any questions, pop them down in the comments. If you haven't already been over to the Snow Camps Europe Facebook page, then pop over, hit the like button or the follow, and then you'll keep up to date with everything Snow Camps Europe and the Sunday Ski Cast. Now, last week, Mike Crawford from DataWax was on. We had a lot of positive feedback about that. And he is going to be coming back in a few weeks' time to finish off because we've got more questions that have been asked about wax and servicing equipment. So anyway, let's get on with tonight's Ski Cast. I'm going to bring Christoph in and we will get started. Good evening, Christoph.
Hi, Andy.
How are you doing, man?
I'm doing well.
Doing well. So I believe you've been hiking this weekend.
Yes, we had a lot of nice sunny weather, at least Thursday, Friday, Saturday here in Austria. So took full advantage of all that.
Good stuff. Okay, so for everybody who doesn't realize that Christoph is in Upper Austria, where I am in Salzburger land. So we are both in Austria, albeit in different places. So before we start with the questions, Christoph, do you want to give us a little bit of background on who you are, what you've done, and where you've been before you got to Fischer?
Yeah, kind of an interesting story. I started with Fischer November 2019 as a product manager for Alpine ski boots in Ried im Innkreis, Austria. But before that, I was born and raised in Park City, Utah. Grew up as an alpine ski racer, was a member of the Park City ski team there. Skied slalom, GS, Super G downhill. Later in my career, kind of only focused on the tech events. Went to the Winter Sports School in Park City, a specialized high school for winter athletes. Took a postgraduate year. Continued to focus on ski racing, did lots of summer training down in South America and traveled all over North America racing. And then I went on to race NCAA Division I at Williams College in Northwestern Massachusetts. So I was there for 4 years. Studying economics and German, but at the same time was a member of the ski team, which was a lot of fun and kind of a different twist on the normally individual sport of ski racing. It was fun to be a member of a team there. So was always very close to the sport of skiing, and particularly racing. For the last probably 10 years of my career, I skied for Fischer or skied on the Fischer product. Developed a good relationship with a lot of the race reps, especially in the States, and got invited at one point up to the Mount Hood Summer Glacier, the test camps that Fischer would set up. Lots of brands do 2 or 3 months up there every summer. See if that happens this year, but where we would set up a demo center with the coming season's product and let all types of athletes try it out. Was a great way to get summer training and be closer to the brand and kind of see some of the sales retail side of things. Learned a lot of boot fitting along the way. It was the beginning of the Fischer vacuum story around that time too. So I was in the garage with lots of the boot fitters and very cool experience. So through my relationship with them, or I maintained a close relationship with the Fischer guys. After I graduated from college, I moved to New York City and lived in Manhattan for 4 years, working as a data scientist at a financial technology startup.
A data scientist.
Yes, that was my formal title. At one point was a senior manager of data science at the end, before I became the product manager of lending for that company. Totally different area, very exciting, data driven, obviously. Learned a lot of different things. Totally kind of a culture shock growing up in the mountains and suddenly being in Manhattan and all the people, lots of different types of people. A lot of fun was had, but pretty quickly realized that was not where I wanted to be, and that my passion for the outdoors was not being fulfilled. Moved to San Francisco, was there for about a year, and then what was that? January 2019, I made a trip to Austria with my little brother, who's an avid skier as well, and we watched the Hahnenkamm downhill race in Kitzbühel. It was an incredible winter that year, and I was just blown away by the ski culture in Europe. I had never really experienced it firsthand, and basically decided I wanted to try living and working in Europe. And luckily, things worked out with Fischer, so made the transition. Another kind of interesting tidbit: my mother is from Garmisch-Partenkirchen, Germany, in Bavaria. So I had German citizenship, speak German reasonably well, even a little bit of dialect. So all kind of exciting things for me, and gave me some sort of advantage in the hiring process. And so excited to be here. Relatively new in the position, but still learning a lot every day. But very excited because it is, something I'm passionate about and actually live in my free time as well. So
Okay, good stuff. Brilliant. Good. So we're going to get straight into the questions. We've already got some coming in the comments as well, but we'll start with the first opening question. And basically, it's quite a broad one. So it's how is a new ski boot developed? How long does it take to actually get it from conception to market?
This one was a relatively big surprise for me when I started. Takes a lot longer than as a pure consumer I would have expected. But I'd say the broad answer is probably minimum 2 years, and on average 2 to 3 years. Can be longer depending on the amount of development that needs to go into there. There's a number of kind of fixed steps that need to happen. Generally deciding what you want to build and for who. So that's a lot of market research, competitor analysis, deciding what exists, what works, where are the trends going, what is missing in our current collection, deciding we need to exactly build X. So that's kind of the first stage, and that can take multiple years. Also involved in that, and I'll touch on it, but I mean, it's incredibly expensive to develop a ski boot. And that's given by the fact that we need to build molds for each size. And those molds will cost upwards of 20,000 euros. So the company wants to be very certain that we're developing the right product before any such investment gets the green light. Being very precise and targeted with what we're going to build helps in terms of moving that along. But let's say we've decided we want to build the next great on-piste mass consumer boot. We would decide who we're building it for, what are the key features and criteria that it would need. We would end up building a 3D CAD model, so it's done digitally. Once we've tweaked and measured and come up with something that we like, with input from design, input from engineers and technical plastic folks, is this feasible? We mill a mold. I mean, that CAD development can take anywhere from months to a year, depending on how many iterations and how much is going on there. With a finalized computer model, we can mill an actual mold. We'll start with normally just one size. So we'll build that mold, we'll inject that with plastic. You'll have an actual physical boot. Depending on kind of how you want to go, we need to fit the cuff to that boot. Can be difficult sometimes in computer modeling to fit a cuff appropriately to a foot, or give it to an actual foot, because the shell changes shape obviously with a foot in it. So once you've kind of got a working skiable prototype, it needs to be skied. We're obviously limited to some degree in our development cycle by the times in the year where people are on snow, where we have a test panel who is frequently on snow, obviously in the summer months. Despite skiing being worldwide, it's harder to find that that kind of qualified test panel where we can get good feedback. With a full prototype on snow, we'll collect feedback, see if it works, make any iterations needed. From there, we can, on the computer model, grade out the other sizes. Typical size run will have maybe 8 to 10. And then those other boots need to be injected, make sure everything works. That's kind of the technical development. Once that's happened, sales marketing packages need to be made. And it needs to be presented. We can build the best ski boot in the world, but if it doesn't have a story to it, it hasn't been explained properly, hasn't been positioned on the market, it won't be a success. So once we have a skiable working thing, it does take a lot of work from other departments. And then finally, after kind of usually at Munich and ISPO in January and beginning of February, new collections are presented. At the same time, we're getting orders in. It needs to be then mass produced, and that'll show up in the shop that coming fall. So, long story short, 2 to 3 years.
The short answer is quite a long time.
Yes.
Okay, cool. We have got quite a lot of questions. So for moving forward now, let's try and keep our answers a little bit shorter. So Nikki is asking one that's relevant to what you've just been talking about. I've got little feet, size 3.5 UK. When designing a woman's boot, what things are you taking into consideration?
Yeah, good question. Obviously, shell size is important. We need to have a boot that comes down into those small enough sizes. Speaking in terms of Mondo points, that's usually a 21 or a 22 size shell. Additionally, we need to consider that a lot of women generally have a shorter cuff or a shorter leg, which translates into a shorter cuff. So we tend to grade the entire shell down over the size there compared to a traditional men's boot. Additionally, we consider the volume as well. So making sure that that it's not just simply scaled down, but that it fits the standard anatomy, which might be slightly narrower, slightly lower instep. And then finally, one thing we've started taking on for most of our women's specific boots is liner construction. Females often have poor circulation and can suffer from cold feet therefrom. So we use Primaloft in all of our women's specific liners, which is a blend that gives maximal thermal insulation.
Okay, cool. So quite a few different considerations there, Nikki. And I've just realized I've probably got a lady's foot. I need some Primaloft inner boots by the sound of it. We got another one from Mark. Mark looks like he's in the trade. Question about flex from a retailer. Why do Fischer ski boots have more flex on average than other brands? Often I have compared 100, 110 flex from other brands with a 120 flex from Fischer. I have the idea that the 2020 samples have been adjusted. Is that correct? Okay, so there's a couple of questions there. One relating to flex standardization, and then one relating to the 2020 samples?
Yeah, I'd say just from the very high level, flexes are not a standardized unit of measurement. It is something that is unique to each ski brand, to each ski boot model. And there's a number of factors that go into how a boot flexes. And ultimately, flex is very subjective. If first thing you can change or consider is obviously which plastic is being made or being used and what the durometer or the hardness of that plastic is. Much harder plastic will have a stiffer flex naturally, but it's not just how hard the plastic is. There's also a certain element of elasticity, which varies across the different plastic types. You've got your polyurethanes, your polyamides, polypropylenes, all have a slightly different flex characteristic. Will also all flex differently at different temperatures. So when we're setting up our collection, we'll try to make a choice of, and it's there's always naturally a compromise there between weight, between temperature stability. So will this boot flex the same at minus 20 degrees as the same as plus 20 degrees? And then finally, also wall thickness. So depending on the design of the boot, if you have a really thick boot, a thick shell, which you'll traditionally find in a World Cup race boot with very thick shells, you'll have a much stiffer flex. In terms of what Fischer specifically tries to do, we tried to benchmark to be in the middle of those ranges. But broadly speaking, those flex points are a benchmark largely for the consumer and the retailer to say that this boot is stiffer than this boot, but it's not an empirical comparison. We have been trying to reduce variability there and avoid certain characterizations that were out of the sweet spot band. And for the 2020 collection, there has been some changes in materials, and it's something that does happen where we ski and test all the competitor boots and try to get an accurate benchmark and try to make those as comparable as possible. Final other point I'd note here is volume and just ultimately fit of the boot. If you've got a very narrow foot and you're in a wide lasted boot, let's say your foot measures 97 millimeters across and you're in a boot that's 100 millimeters wide, there's going to be a lot of volume in that lower foot, which will let the shell bulge and kind of bend out of shape. And that's just something that is subjective to each person. So yeah, lots of considerations that also explain why flex is not an empirical standard.
Yeah. Okay, cool. There you go, Mark. That I'm sure has explained that for you. Just where are you, Mark? Where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments. Be interesting to know. Okay, another one from the ones that we've had sent in. So Simon, hello Simon, thanks for sending in your question. He's asking, how do you determine the forward lean of your boots, so of Fischer boots, as he believes that different companies have got different amounts of degrees, anything ranging from 12 to 17. So how do you determine it? And then also he asks, what do you consider the optimal forward lean to be?
Another good question, and effectively a subjective answer. We Fischer tried to target a natural athletic stance in all of our boots, meaning that your weight is forward or towards the ball of your feet, that you're sort of in a ready position in the sense that that's where you'd want to ski. Additionally, we also try to set up in a position that will give our boot fitter friends as much ability to adjust as needed, because again, subjectively, forward lean can be it depends on the shape and your body anatomy. If you have a really thick calf with lots of calf muscles, your effective forward lean, or what position you'll be in while wearing the boot, regardless of the actual geometry of the cuff will be naturally more forward than what somebody with a very skinny calf would have. So that's kind of one thing. We have a long heritage in racing. So basically all of our collection targets about a 16-degree forward lean. We have a couple more upright models, but that's what we've decided is a nice sweet spot. Can obviously be adjusted in a number of ways, some by yourself and with add-on products, or by your boot fitter, being a spoiler. So most of our boots have a Velcro attachable spoiler that can be put on the liner. That'll give you another 3 to 5 degrees of forward lean. Additionally, you can add a plastic spoiler, actually screw it to the cuff of the boot to get even more. Ramp angle, so effectively the angle of the boot board where your foot stands on, can also be modified to adjust that forward lean. And our Curve GT boot coming for 2021, here, actually contains a wedge that we can remove from the bottom of the footboard. So this is another way to gain or remove a degree in that range. Long story short, what is the optimal forward lean is really comes down to what works for you. If you get a boot out of the box and you're comfortable skiing pain-free and the ski is able to do what you want, it's working for you. It's not something that necessarily needs to be tweaked. There's a lot of racers and some target audiences that want a little more forward lean. Tends to be an advantage on steeper terrain where you need a little bit of help getting forward. A little more upright boot can have the tendency to make it feel like you're falling over backwards, but again, depends very much on your anatomy. One tip that I've heard from boot fitting circles as well is to just stand on a flat surface, barefoot, bend your knees, and see how far you can extend your toes, or extend your knees over your toes. If you're able to extend your knees all the way over your toes, means you have a pretty good range of motion, and something like a 15 to 17 degree forward lean will be suitable. If you're limited in that range of motion, it would be a mistake to get into a boot with more forward lean. So that's something where we try to target a sweet spot to make it as consumer friendly as possible. And for example, our Curve GT boot, it's hard to see in this light, but has a asymmetrical backbone, so we can pull this off, twist this piece, and slide in or out this spoiler to go between 14 and 17 degrees. Just one way to try to make it as adjustable as possible.
Is that the end of the answer?
I mean, I can keep talking, but
No,
I think we'll leave it there.
No, it is all extremely good information, but we have got a lot of questions to get through. So we need to be a little bit more economical with the answers. Now, just going back to Mark. Mark is watching from Holland at Outdoor XL. See, he even got an advert in for his shop there. Well done, Mark. Thanks for asking your question. So next one. Okay. I think this is a really easy answer. And I'm guessing that this person has got a pair of head boots, because Mark is asking, is there a way to stop white boots discoloring? I store them in a boot bag year round, and still after 4 or 5 weeks, they are turning yellowish in color. Okay, so I have had head boots, and I know that this is something that happens after a few weeks. So is there a way of stopping that from happening with white boots?
Long story short, I mean, we have 2 models in our collection that have white shells. Haven't noticed it to be really a problem. I think it's rather specific to the plastic mixture being used. A lot of those polyurethanes will have a few additives in them that can discolor with UV light. Suggestion would be obviously storing them out of sunlight, which it sounds like this comment has already addressed. But yeah, it's kind of part of it. From what I've heard, there's certain techniques out there, from cleaning supplies to basically elbow grease and just scrubbing them, that can help maintain that finish. But yeah, that's it's a material problem, and say keeping it out of sun and probably also heat in the basement would be one option. But I've seen a lot of yellow head boots out there.
Yeah. I've had several pair, and they've all gone a different color, even when they changed from the rough plastic to the smooth plastic. But what would be interesting to try, Mark, and I might give this a go, because I know on cars, the black plastic trim on cars that then goes a very grey white color, you can bring that black back by applying heat through a hairdryer. So it might be a similar scenario.
I think for that it's less of a heat solution, but I think it's really because it's an oxidized, and it's actually a change in the chemical properties. And for the most part, what I've seen, it's been with a polyurethane oil-based plastic. It's similar to what happens with your car headlights, that will fog up and essentially lose their shine and clarity over time. So it's a pretty proactive treatment that needs to be done. There's bleach solutions, hydrogen peroxide, some standard cleaners. I'd warn against using bleach on your boot shells, but yeah, be careful or don't buy white boots.
The old Salomon answer, Keith is telling us, was to put them on a sunbed. Okay. Quite an expensive way to keep your boots white, unless you owned a sunbed, Keith. I don't know. But thanks for that, mate. Thank you. Okay, next one. Emma, I have heard these new lightweight alpine boots have performance issues. Is there a balance between weight and performance?
Long story short, absolutely. I think everything is a bit of a trade-off. We're looking at these touring boots, which by definition have a walk mechanism that opens to allow the cuff to have more range of motion. Great for going uphill, and especially walking on flat terrain. But it does, that is a key kind of structural point of a ski boot. That's where lots of the power comes from, is that connection. And it's the only place where there's a fixed connection between the lower shell and the upper cuff. And so that's kind of inherently weakened by adding the walk mechanism. Which is ultimately the difference between your touring boot and a standard race boot, where that section has been designed to maintain max stability and power transfer. I would say the boots, there's been a lot of progress in the last 5-10 years, probably 5 years, of really making skiable touring boots. In my testing personally, and I've skied lots of different brands, the huge factor is also what kind of binding you're on, the width and length of the ski. If you're on a heavy, wide ski with a heavy binding on it and you're skiing in a touring boot, it'll be a little bit unbalanced pairing, let's say, where the ski will overpower the boot. So if you are able to pair that a little more appropriately, I've found that the performance difference is not perfect. It's an area of skiing that really interests me, and there's a lot of things in the works to continue to improve there. And I think that's generally a market trend where trying to build performance, but mobile touring boots, continuing to,
Okay, cool. There you go, Emma. Hopefully that's answered your question. So I'm going to bring in another one from the comments. It's quite a long one from Alistair. Alistair is saying, "Hi, Andy." Hello, Alistair. I go mad looking at skiers' boots and thinking, given their stature, they cannot have feet big enough for the boots to fit correctly. Boots always seem disproportionately big or long? Can you ask what is the manufacturer's view on length, width, volume of boots relevant to skiers' foot? Oh, okay, yeah, there we go. I would say, Alistair, they've probably got boots that are too big, but go on, Christoph.
Yeah, I'd say the general consumer, and I mean, standing in the lift line, you'll definitely see some alien looking from the proportion, just massive boots out there. I'd say Fischer in particular has made a big push in the last year in terms of trying to address this. And one part, it's trying to inform the consumer. To another degree, it's trying to push understanding and essentially on the dealer side, but of having different volumes. So for our Curve family, the boot I was showing earlier, we have that offered in 3 different volumes. So we have a low volume, medium volume, and a high volume boot, basically, exactly, of the same boot, the same performance, but the only thing that has changed is basically the last width, so how wide it measures across the ball of your foot laterally. So the idea there is that we can try to fit each foot into the right size boot. There is some inherent, call it discomfort, sliding into a boot, especially for not so experienced or big skiers who just go into the shop and want something that feels really comfortable right away. They're probably often making a mistake of getting something that's too big, and down the line they will also suffer from the lack of performance, and having too much room can also cause further discomfort. Another point to note is the liner will over time generally pack out or reduce in volume as well, so you'll gain a little place. But yeah, I think the biggest advice there is everybody would do well to visit a boot fitter when they're getting a boot. I mean, I'm obviously a little bit biased, but I personally believe that the boot is the most important part of a ski setup. It's the only physical link you have between yourself and the snow. You're not actually touching your ski, but if there's something wrong with your boot, it's not fitting. It's not gonna do what you want it to do or enable you to reach as much as possible. Final note on boot fitting or boot sizing. Fischer is pushing a digital solution, and it's available right today on the Android and iOS app stores, called Fischer ScanFit, and we are able to, from 3 still photographs on a stationary piece of paper that gives some dimensions, able to measure your foot down to 0.5 millimeters, and that'll generate a 3D rendering of your foot. Interesting exercise because it'll highlight differences in foot sizes, foot lengths, and we also have our entire catalog of boots scanned in, and those will be overlaid with your boot, so you will be able to get a recommendation of which boot fits and which size is appropriate for you. But
What was that called again, Christoph?
the Fischer ScanFit app.
Fischer ScanFit app. Don't go and download it now, people. Continue watching the SkiCast. You can do it later on. Now, while we are on the just in between questions, we got 31 people watching on the Snow Camps page, probably a fair few others on other watch parties, and we've got 25 likes. That doesn't add up to me, folks. I want to see some more likes coming in. This is valuable information we're getting off Christoph. And at the moment, only 25 likes. There you go, Alistair. Hopefully that has answered your question. Tim McCall, a regular on the SkiCast, he's got a question. Do you ever see a product from another brand and think, why did we not think of that?
Long story short, yes. I think the exciting time of year is the ISPO trade show has always been kind of the first time of the year where we see new collections, and exciting to see the directions other brands are going. Not going to name anything specific I've seen, but there's all kinds of small tweaks, and I think in the general realm of boots, uh, the landscape has not been altered tremendously in the last call it 20 years. So it's attention to little details and small little tweaks that have massive performance and cosmetic and other gains. So yeah, there's always little things you see. Interesting in the world of patents as well. Spent a lot of time looking at historical stuff, and a lot's been tried. And with materials evolving the way they do, there's always options. But I've been quite impressed by a number of brands, and yeah, it's competitive out there.
Cool. There you go, Tim. Yes. Yes is the answer to the question. I hope you've hit the like button. Oh, we've now got 27 likes. Fantastic. So Keith Webb is asking a question. Here we go. On the face of it, ski boot design has not changed much in the last 30 years. Rear entry designs have almost disappeared. Why do you think this is? Because they were crap, Keith. That's why. That's my thought anyway.
Yeah, interesting point. I mean, Nordica has brought a rear entry boot back onto the market. Yeah. That from where I've been sitting has generated a fair bit of buzz. As far as I'm concerned, I don't see Fischer making one, and remains to be seen if that's a powerful trend in the market or just a brief intrigue. I think the reason it disappeared is they're heavy, they're optically not very appealing, and from performance, you really only have that one buckle. It doesn't really translate into a good skiing, pure performance skiing perspective. I think from when I look at the market in general, and I think there's always a bit of oscillation of where the direction is going. There's been a shift towards comfort in the last few years, and so that might explain Nordica's thinking there with trying to bring that back onto the market. But I think at the end of the day, people still want to go skiing for the joy of skiing and have the right performing product. And it's not all about being as comfortable in the lodge and in and out. Definitely a balance between the two. So I think Fischer, with the heritage we have always been a little bit more on the performance side. And I mean, part of our mission statement is we want to be the athlete's number one choice. So I think we always want to have make sure that our performance and our downhill skiing ability is covered.
Okay, good stuff. There you go, Keith. A couple of other things coming in. Kevin, hi, sorry I'm late. I was working, only just got home. We'll watch and catch up. Welcome, Kevin. Good to have you back. Good to have you back. A few boot fitters commenting on Alistair's question. Big boots are like driving the car with a steering rack loose. Yep, very much so, Keith. Lack of control, big time. What else we got? Keep the buckle boot. What else have we got? So there's now a little bit of boot fitter banter going on. Colin mentioning Fabi for those wanting performance, but definitely a market for them. Okay, so there's a market for rear entry boots is what Colin is saying, or Fabi is saying, one or the other. Good stuff. Okay, so another question. Tim's just come back with another one. He always does this to me. Here we go. How much do you work with other departments on ranges, e.g. the curve? Is it constant communication?
I'm not sure I fully understand the question, but I mean, the way I see my role as a product manager is effectively a liaison between all the other departments in the company. And at the end of the day, I'm not really able to do anything on my own, whether that's build a 3D CAD model, whether that's actually physically change the material properties. Design wise, we have that's a separate department as well. Obviously, pricing, those things are handled through sales and whatnot. Marketing is another. They handle a lot of all the external communication, whereas as a product manager, you're really the responsible one and need to be the linchpin to be able to communicate a new line, for example, the curve. But yeah, I interface with every other department within the company, in addition to all of our external opinion leaders and boot fitter friends, etc.
Cool. There you go, Tom. Tim. Hopefully that's cleared that for you. Keith is back again on the rear entry boots. Elderly peace cruisers to whom performance is not an issue but wish to keep skiing can benefit from rear entry loaders. Totally agree with you, Keith. Totally agree with you. As I said,
Yeah.
there is a place for them in the market for sure. They wouldn't have brought them back. And there are people who just want, as Chris said, they want comfort and warmth a lot of the time, and performance isn't always their thing.
Yeah, on that point, I'd say, I fully agree that there is a market there, and it's something we're very aware of. On our RC1 and Ranger 1 models, which are a little bit wider of a last at a 101 millimeter, we've added a kind of an easy entry flap. So on top of the instep, there's a folding piece, difficult to see on a static picture, and I don't have one here with me, but is a piece that slides, but does give you the skiing performance of a traditional 4-buckle overlap boot, still allowing you a one-hand easy entry. So it's something that's on the radar, but rear entry is kind of a whole nother direction.
Yeah. Okay, Tim has come back. Just to clarify, he was meaning in between your interfacing with the ski side of the business, so the boot to the ski. That's what he was after. But I think you probably answered that kind of anyway. So we will crack on.
Yeah.
We've got a fair few to go through, and we've only got about 10 minutes that we can, or 10, 15 minutes to go. But this is probably quite an easy one to answer. Tom is asking, what's the future ski boot? What future ski boots are you working on at Fischer?
I guess all I can really say is we've got a number of things in the oven, under development, ranging from the touring side to the high performance side to the multi-performance touring aspect. Can't really say much more than this point, but in all areas, we're trying to push the boundaries and keep on improving.
Okay. Tom asked that. Tom and anyone else who hasn't seen it on our YouTube channel, we were actually up on the Kitzsteinhorn testing prototype Fischer boots last week. After you finish, go and watch that. But again, don't be disappointed that you don't get too much information, because anything we would have told you, we would have then had to kill you because it's all top secret. Now, a similar question from Carl. Where will the future go with ski boots? Are lighter boots? We go back to the is light as stable as heavier race boots? But I suppose the first part of that question, what's the future of ski boots?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned it before. I see ski boots as the most critical part of your ski package, more so than actually the skis or the bindings, direct link to your foot. So I'd say making sure they fit great, that we can deliver a consistent fit, and make them as comfortable but as performing as possible, is the future. In terms of lightweight, I'd see that similar as sort of comfort versus performance. There's also another axis there of lightweight versus stability, both of which are a compromise. I see it as a bit of a pendulum, where we'll swing really far in one way, and it'll eventually swing back. I think the most recent push has been lightweight, which has coincided with the use of gorilla mids, polyamide plastic that does have that property of being super lightweight. Is very stiff, not a lot of elasticity in that plastic, gives a certain feel to the boot, which some may like, may not like. I don't see it continuing in that direction forever. I'd say unless you're really in the skimo, trying to do thousands of meters of vertical gain a day, 100 grams to 500 grams per boot end up being rather marginal, but it is a number that gets a lot of attention in ski tests, boot tests. So it's definitely a compromise, and I don't see it continuing in that direction forever. I think people still want a boot that performs well, which means a little bit of weight and the necessary plastics.
Okay, cool. So there's a question in the comments, and there's a question we've got on the sheet which kind of ties them together, I think, and it is what is the difference between vacuum fit and zone fit? And this is from Martin. Difference between vacuum and zone fit.
Yeah, and then there's what's the future for vacuum machine?
Yeah.
So starting, I believe it was last season. I don't have all the collections fully memorized from years before my time. We now have a zone fit. It comes in a little box, and it's got 8 silicon heating pads. It's got a built-in computer chip and a little display screen that allows you to select the model of your boot, and those pads will heat up to 120 degrees Celsius. What that allows you to do is essentially do localized fitting of your shells, and it works well with our vacuum plastic, which is a proprietary mixture of polyamide mixture that Fischer uses in many of its models. But compared to the traditional vacuum fit, which has been around for coming up on 10 years now, we've got this more localized zone fit. So if you've only got a hot spot on your 6th toe and maybe something on your instep or on your ankle, allows a boot fitter to be able to place those pads exactly on the pressure points. Inside the shell, we can put in extra padding, essentially heat up that part of the shell, stand in it, and it'll be a 10-15 minute process where that part will immediately expand. Benefit of our vacuum plastic, it has that memory effect, so it will hold the shape, and you can immediately go skiing, or 20 minutes later you can go ski in it and notice the difference. What the original version of that was, which was kind of a all-encompassing vacuum fit, also known as the vacuum full fit, and most commonly associated with our vacuum machines, which is I think what Mark is getting at, is a full station, which has compressor pads in it, put the whole shell in an oven, and will allow the cuff and the shell to be completely customized. From our tests, we see ourselves being able to gain 3 millimeters larger or smaller everywhere. It's not always necessary. And as mentioned before, we try to continually adapt the shape of our boots to be as atomically appropriate out of the box. So I see that becoming less and less critical as the natural fit of our boots become better. When that process was originally designed, we only had one last, meaning there was only one width of boot for every model. Now that we've expanded how we have our specific low, medium, and high volume, the first segmentation should really be to choose which of these three pillars, if you think of it as a grid, how wide is my foot, and then we can decide, okay, what type of boot am I looking for? What type of skiing am I doing? And there we should already be pretty close. And so small hot spots can be done with that zone fit, small heating pad machine.
Small tweaks. Cool, good stuff. There you go, Mark. Colin has got a question for us related to the virus. How do you see the current Corona-19 situation affecting next season in 2021? Is it going to be a big carryover into 21-22, or does development keep charging forward?
Good question, Colin. I'd say when it comes to COVID-19, I'd say there's lots of uncertainty, and I'd say that's pretty global phenomenon that nobody really knows what's going to happen. From where I'm sitting, I think people will keep skiing. I think it's, especially in these difficult times, it's a pleasant release. And I spent March and April at home in Utah. I was blown away at how many people were ski touring for the first time because the resorts were closed. A lot of people just wanting to go skiing. Obviously, from the dealer and the business perspective, is a little bit trickier. So I'd say that the demand will remain stable. For 21-22, we have made the decision to carry over quite a few models, but not completely. Given the kind of additional time pressure we were under, and at the beginning of the show, I kind of, in some detail, went into the development process and all the steps we needed. We did lose some time on snow this winter of being able to test stuff. And part of Fischer's motto is to try to deliver quality, reliable products. And if we don't feel comfortable with where we are, we don't want to rush anything out the door without knowing it's been fully tested. So to sum that whole rant together, there is going to be some carryover, perhaps more than what we had originally planned for the 21-22 season. But development is continuing as planned. All the projects are still going, and perhaps might have been shifted slightly in timeline. But yeah, else I have to say.
There you go. Yeah, who knows? Who knows? Who even knows if we'll be skiing this winter? Let's hope we are. Now, Andrew is saying this podcast is cool. Thank you very much, Andrew. But I would like to point out it's not a podcast because you can see us. Here we are. We're on the screen. This is more of a broadcast, I would like to think it is. But welcome along, Andrew. Thank you for joining us. One or two more questions, and then we will have to wrap it up. Trevor is asking, what's the big benefit of grip walk soles? I see them on most of the new generation boots.
Yeah, grip walk, for those who are not familiar, is a sole plate that's removable. You can see it here, toe and heel plate. Just speaking in terms of geometry and how this piece is designed, we can see there's a bit more rocker. Show this the best. There's a bit more rocker under the toe. We still have the same AFD plate so that it will slide and work with the bindings. Big advantage of this, you obviously have more grip. It's a 2-component injection, so you have harder plastic and softer plastic, which gives you much more grip. And the rockered toe gives you a much more natural feeling walking through the parking lot or across whatever you're walking, whether that's on the bar as well. So huge advantage, or at least where we see ourselves positioning. Nearly all of our collection has that. I think 95% of our collection comes standard with the grip lock sole. And you can see that there. Bindings are slowly all becoming these multi-norm compatible, grip lock compatible bindings. So that last boot shown did not have them, obviously.
That's why I showed it. That's why I showed it, because you can see the difference.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But from a consumer perspective, it's a huge advantage. It's just more comfortable, more security. And from a dealer perspective, with the 10 screws that need to be removed, and we offer the regular Alpine plates, which is just a flat plastic sole that will fit into older bindings. Fischer basically sees that as the future, and are continuing to push that on our collections. It is something that as bindings progress and older bindings continue to get phased out, that we see as being just a mark standard. And because we have it standard across all our boots, it means that a dealer only needs to order one set of grip lock replacement soles and one set of Alpine replacement soles that will work for any boot model they happen to carry.
Okay, cool. Let me just ask we've seen this before on boots, right? This isn't something that's totally new, albeit that front angle I don't think I've seen before, but we had interchangeable grip soles on other boots over the years, didn't we?
I mean, you ski in a race boot that's got a lifted race plate. So I don't know if you've ever actually skied in one. It's a remarkable difference in terms of just the ability to walk normal without a real heavy heel strike.
Yeah.
They are not new, been around for years.
Yeah,
but what kind of the emphasis is really that we've decided to carry it standard. A lot of brands will put it on the top model or only one model, or have it as a pure replacement part. And so the fact that we offer that standard is just is a huge benefit out of the box.
Yeah, it's the standardization across the range, isn't it? Rather than
and it simplifies any work a dealer would have to do in terms of what kind of spare parts they need to keep on stock. We're guilty of it too in the past, where we had 5 different sole plates across all of our boot collection. And if you're a boot fitter that needs to have, or a dealer that needs to have all those spare parts in, obviously if they get worn down, if they get damaged, they can be easily replaced, but it simplifies the complexity there.
Okay, cool, good stuff. Now we are 31 viewers on the Snow Camps page and 30 likes. That's more like it, folks. Mark is asking, I think it's can rather than you also use. Can you also use the Zone Fit machine on other brands?
I can't speak to I guess the material layup of other boots. I'd say that's one advantage that we've tested with our brand, with our plastics, across all of our ranges, and it does work. The nice part about our Zone Fit machines is it does have all the Fischer models pre-programmed in. So depending on which model and which size, it will have a preset temperature that it'll heat the pads to, because there's a range that it can adjust those pads to, and it'll also have a preset time. Concern there is you don't want to overheat and melt a boot, and it needs to reach a certain temperature to get to that range where it can be molded. We've done all the work to calculate those times for our collection and pre-programmed it, so it's really only 2 taps of the button and you're ready to go. In theory, it could work with other brands, but it is again hasn't been tested with their collections, and their material use can be different.
There you go, Mark. There is your answer. So Fantastic. I think we will wrap it up there. We've just hit the 1 hour mark. We try not to go over now. We know everybody's time is precious. So, Christoph, thank you very much. Some extremely interesting stuff there. I've, again, on another SkiCast, learned a phenomenal amount of stuff I didn't know, as I did with socks the other week and as I did with ski servicing last week. So thank you very much for joining us, taking your Sunday night to answer our questions. If we get any more questions in the comments in the coming days, we will answer them. I will pass them over to Christoph, and Christoph will come back and he will pop the answers in, or he'll send them to me and I'll put them in. But on behalf of everyone who has asked a question, thank you, Christoph. Top stuff. Keep the boots coming. Colin is saying, good job, guys. Great cast, guys. Keep going. Thank you very much. So, yeah, we will leave it there. Next week, I hopefully will have a Team GB racer. I will confirm in the next day or two. And we will be talking about Team GB, how it is to be an athlete in the team, and we'll also have their coach on as well. So start thinking of questions that you want to ask, folks. More information coming in the pre-promotion video in the coming days. Andrew is also apologizing for his... Oh, Crazy Daisies is saying thanks. Mark is thanking us. Apologies for late arrival, but thanks, guys. No worries, Andrew. You can watch it on demand or on replay, however you want, on the Facebook, and it will take a little bit of time to load up onto YouTube, but it will be there. Fabi is saying thanks, guys. Brilliant. Okay, there you go. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Christoph.
My pleasure.
I will end the broadcast and we'll see you all next week. Ciao for now. And they can't even see me. Right, I made an absolute mess of that. I shut my browser rather than ending the broadcast. So bye for now, everybody. See you next week.